Most gardeners think year-round vegetable production is a myth reserved for commercial farms with heated greenhouses and unlimited resources. They plant everything in May, harvest frantically in August and September, and then spend 10 months buying overpriced, flavorless produce that was picked unripe and shipped 2,000 miles before landing on their table. But here's what nobody tells you. There are exactly 10 vegetables that, when planted strategically across the seasons, will keep your kitchen stocked with fresh food every single month of the year. Even in January, even without spending thousands on infrastructure, and for less money than you're currently wasting on grocery store vegetables that taste like wet cardboard. The real problem with most home gardens isn't lack of space or poor soil or bad weather. The problem is that everyone grows the same crops at the same time and then acts surprised when their garden only produces for 12 weeks out of 52. They start tomatoes in late spring, watch them ripen in August, pull everything out in October. And then their garden becomes a barren wasteland while they go back to paying $6 for a bag of spinach that wilted 3 days ago and $1 for tomatoes that have the texture and flavor of foam rubber. And they tell themselves that's just how gardening works, that fresh vegetables are a summer luxury, and that winter means relying on the grocery store. But when you understand succession planting, seasonal varieties, and strategic crop selection, everything changes. Because year-round gardening isn't about fighting nature with expensive technology. It is about working with nature by choosing vegetables that thrive in each season and planting them at precisely the right time so something is always ready to harvest no matter what the calendar says. And these 10 vegetables are the backbone of that system, the crops that make continuous fresh food production possible for regular people with regular gardens. The first vegetable is kale, and it's non-negotiable for year-round growing because kale is essentially indestructible. It tolerates summer heat without bolting, survives winter temperatures down to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, grows in mediocre soil that would kill more demanding crops, and produces continuously for 8 to 10 months from a single planting. While tender vegetables are dying in the first frost of fall, your kale just getting started because cold weather triggers a chemical change that converts starches to sugars, making the leaves sweeter and more tender after frost than they were in summer. This means you plant kale once in early spring, harvest leaves continuously from June through March, and you have fresh greens available during the hardest months when almost nothing else grows. Start kale seeds indoors in early spring or direct, sow them in the garden after the last frost. Space plants 18 inches apart in decent soil with some compost mixed in, then harvest by cutting the outer leaves while leaving the central growing point intact, which allows the plant to keep producing new leaves for months. And here is the key that most gardeners miss: plant kale again in late summer for fall and winter harvest. That second planting will grow slowly through autumn, stand through winter even in harsh climates, and provide fresh greens in February and March when your body is desperate for something green after months of stored root vegetables. Two plantings of kale, one in spring and one in late summer, give you fresh greens for 10 months of the year from a crop that requires almost no maintenance and costs pennies to grow. Make deep holes with a dibber, drop each Leeks seedling into the hole, and water thoroughly without filling the hole with soil. Space Leeks 6 inches apart in rows and let them grow through summer and fall. Then instead of harvesting them all at once, just leave them in the garden and dig them as needed throughout winter. Frost and snow don't damage leeks at all, and they'll stand in the garden until spring, providing fresh vegetables in January, February, and March when your stored root vegetables are running low and grocery store produce is expensive and terrible. One planting of leeks in spring gives you fresh food for 8 months, from fall harvest through early spring, without any storage infrastructure or preservation work. The fifth vegetable is carrots, but specifically late-season carrots planted in midsummer for fall and winter harvest. Most gardeners plant carrots in spring, harvest them in summer, and then their carrot season is over. But carrots planted in July or August will mature in fall and can be left in the ground under heavy mulch throughout winter, staying fresh and crisp in the frozen soil better than any root cellar. The key is understanding that carrots are a cool season crop that actually prefers growing in fall because cool temperatures produce sweeter, more flavorful roots. Plant carrot seeds directly in the garden in midsummer, about 10 to 12 weeks before your first expected fall frost. Thin seedlings to 2 inches apart and keep the soil consistently moist. Then let them grow through fall, and after the first hard freeze, cover the carrot bed with 12 inches of straw, leaves, or hay. This insulation prevents the ground from freezing solid, which allows you to dig carrots throughout winter even in cold climates. Just push aside the mulch, dig what you need, and replace the mulch. The carrots stay fresh and crisp in the frozen ground, often until March or April, giving you fresh root vegetables all winter long without a root cellar or any preservation work. The 6th vegetable is garlic, which is planted in fall for summer harvest, but provides year-round value because properly cured garlic stores for 10 months, taking you from one harvest to the next. Garlic is one of the most expensive vegetables in grocery stores, often selling for $5 to $8 per pound for organic bulbs, which makes growing your own garlic an incredible value. Plant individual garlic cloves in mid to late fall, about 4 weeks before the ground freezes. Break apart a bulb into individual cloves, plant them to inches deep and 6 inches apart with the pointed end up, mulch heavily with straw or leaves, and then forget about them until summer. Harvest garlic when the lower leaves turn brown and dry, usually in midsummer. Cure the bulbs by hanging them in a shaded, airy location for 3 to 4 weeks until the outer skin is papery. Then store them in a cool, dry, dark place where they'll keep until the following spring, giving you a full year's supply of garlic from a single fall planting. And as a bonus, in spring you can harvest and eat the garlic scapes, which are the flowering stems, giving you a second harvest of mild garlic-flavored greens perfect for pesto. One small bed of garlic planted in fall provides 2 harvests plus stored garlic for 10 months. The 7th vegetable is winter squash, which includes varieties like butternut, acorn, and cabica that are planted in spring, harvested in fall, and stored for months, providing fresh vegetables well into winter. Winter squash is the ultimate storage crop because properly cured squash stores for 3 to 6 months without refrigeration, processing, or any special equipment. Plant winter squash after all danger of frost has passed, giving each plant plenty of space because they sprawl aggressively. Let the squash grow through summer, and harvest before the first hard freeze when the stems are dry and the skin is hard enough that you cut and puncture it with your thumbnail. Cure squash by leaving them in a warm, dry location for 2 weeks to harden the skin, then store them in a cool, dry place where they'll keep for months. Different varieties have different storage lives, with butternut storing longest, often until March or April. This means one summer crop of winter squash provides fresh food for 5 months, from fall harvest through late winter, without any refrigeration or preservation work. The 8th vegetable is onions, specifically storage onions planted in spring for summer harvest. That store through winter until spring, onions are used in almost every meal, which makes them one of the most valuable crops for self-sufficiency. Start onion seeds indoors in late winter or use onion sets for easier growing. Transplant seedlings or plant sets in early spring, spacing them for 2 to 6 inches apart. Harvest when the tops fall over and begin to dry. Cure onions by laying them in a single layer in a shaded, airy location for 2 to 3 weeks until the outer skin is papery. Then store them in mesh bags in a cool, dry, dark location where they'll keep for 6 to 8 months, providing fresh onions from summer harvest through late winter. Choose long-storing varieties if your goal is year-round production. One bed of onions planted in spring gives you fresh onions for 8 months. The 9th vegetable is potatoes, specifically a succession of early and late varieties planted at different times to provide continuous harvests from early summer through winter storage. Most gardeners plant potatoes once and harvest them once, which gives them a glut in October and nothing by February. But when you plant early varieties in early spring and late varieties in mid-spring, you get to separate harvests plus storage potatoes that last through winter. Early varieties mature in 60 to 80 days, giving you fresh new potatoes in early summer. Late varieties mature in 120 to 140 days, giving you storage potatoes in fall that keep through winter. Plant seed potatoes for inches deep and 12 inches apart, hilling soil around the plants as they grow. Harvest early varieties when plants flower. Let storage varieties grow until the tops die back completely, then dig and cure them in a cool, dark place for 2 weeks before storing, where they'll keep for 4 to 6 months. This succession planting system gives you fresh potatoes from June through March. The 10th vegetable is spinach, but planted strategically in spring and late summer for continuous production. Spinach is a cool season crop that bolts in heat, which means you need to separate plantings to have year-round production. Plant spinach in early spring as soon as soil can be worked, and it will produce abundantly through May and June before bolting. Then plant again in late summer, about 6 to 8 weeks before your first fall frost, and that planting will produce through fall and can be protected with row covers to extend harvest into winter. In mild climates, fall-planted spinach will overwinter and produce again in early spring. Sow seeds half an inch deep, thin to 4 inches apart, and harvest by cutting outer leaves while letting the center continue growing. To plantings of spinach, one in spring and one in late summer, give you fresh spinach for 8 to 9 months of the year. These 10 vegetables represent the foundation of a year-round garden that produces fresh food every single month without expensive infrastructure. And without depending on grocery stores, the key insight is that year-round production isn't about forcing summer vegetables to grow in winter. It's about choosing the right vegetables for each season and planting them strategically so something is always ready to harvest. When you grow kale and chard for continuous grains, lettuce in succession for year-round salads, leeks and carrots that store themselves in the garden, garlic and onions that store indoors for months, winter squash that sits in a closet staying fresh until spring, and potatoes and spinach planted in succession, you eliminate the dependency on grocery stores that most gardeners never escape. Start with these 10 crops, plant them strategically across the seasons, and you'll never look at your garden the same way again.